The price of defiance. The room stank of sweat, blood, and burnt flesh. The cold metal walls of the interrogation chamber reflected dim, flickering lights, casting long shadows over the restrained figure at its center. Sarah Kade hung from the restraints, her wrists rubbed raw from struggling against the unyielding shackles. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes, though swollen, still burned with defiance. Across from her stood Inquisitor Vasher, an enforcer of the Galactic Empire's will. His long, dark robes carried the insignia of his rank, and his cold, reptilian eyes studied her with amusement. He had broken countless prisoners before, extracting information with precision. Humans were weak, fragile creatures that splintered under pain. But Sarah Kade was different. "You have nothing left, girl," Vasher said, his voice smooth, almost gentle. "Your resistance cell is gone. Your world belongs to the Empire. Tell me where the others are hiding, and this suffering will end." Sarah's cracked lips curled into a small, bloodied smile. "Go to hell." Vasher sighed. With a flick of his wrist, one of the guards activated the neural whip. Agony surged through Sarah's body like liquid fire, forcing her back into rigid spasms. But she did not scream. Not anymore. They had tortured her for hours. Electrocuted, burned, cut, every method they could think of. She had endured it all. But she would not break. The Inquisitor stepped closer, placing a clawed hand under her chin and lifting her face. "You humans are resilient in the most foolish ways. But everything breaks in the end." Sarah forced out a weak chuckle. "Then you're gonna have to try harder, lizard." Vasher's expression darkened. Without another word, he turned and gestured to his executioner. A massive alien brute stepped forward, raising a heavy plasma blade. "This is your last chance, human," Vasher said, his voice devoid of amusement now. Sarah met his gaze, and despite her exhaustion, she grinned. "See you soon." The blade came down. Silence. Darkness wrapped around her like a blanket, weightless and vast. Sarah felt herself floating, untethered, slipping further into the abyss. So this is death, she thought. Not so bad. But then, something called to her. A pulse, deep and rhythmic, like a heartbeat. It was distant yet impossible to ignore. It resonated within her bones, within her very essence. A warmth spread through her chest. And then, she gasped. A sharp inhale, air flooding her lungs as her eyes snapped open. She was back. Sarah's body convulsed as she lurched forward, no longer restrained. The pain was gone. Her wounds, the broken ribs, the burns, all healed. She lifted her hands, staring at them in disbelief. They should have been mangled, but instead, they were whole. Her heart pounded, but it felt stronger. Every breath carried an energy she had never felt before. A horrified shriek tore through the chamber. Sarah turned to see one of the guards, his alien features twisted in terror. He had seen her die. They all had. And yet, she stood before them. The executioner dropped his weapon, stumbling backward. Vasher remained frozen, his reptilian eyes wide with shock. This is impossible," he murmured. Sarah took a slow step forward, rolling her shoulders, testing her limbs. Strength coursed through her. Every part of her body felt more powerful, more alive. And she was furious. A feral grin spread across her face. "You should have made sure I stayed dead." She moved. Faster than thought, she was in front of the nearest guard, her fist connecting with his jaw in a bone-shattering blow. He collapsed in a heap before his brain could register what had happened. The executioner raised a weapon, but Sarah grabbed it, snapping it in two like a twig. Before he could react, she drove a palm into his chest, sending him flying into the metal wall. He crumpled, unmoving. The others hesitated, fear overriding their training. Vasher took a step back. "You?" he whispered. "What are you?" Sarah didn't answer. She didn't know. But she knew one thing. She wasn't done. With a final glare, she turned and sprinted toward the exit, her body moving with unnatural speed. Sirens began to wail through the facility as the alarm spread. The Galactic Empire had just realized they had made a terrible mistake. Sarah Kade had died. But 40 minutes later, she returned. Fear spreads in the Empire. The alarms shrieked across the Imperial Detention Complex, red emergency lights pulsing in frantic rhythm. Chaos spread like wildfire. Soldiers rushed to contain the impossible. A prisoner had risen from the dead. Sarah Kade ran through the corridors, her body moving with inhuman speed. Every step felt lighter, every motion effortless. The heavy boots of Imperial guards pounded behind her, but she was faster, stronger. She barely felt the cold metal beneath her bare feet as she darted through the labyrinth of hallways. She turned a corner and nearly collided with a squad of armored soldiers. Their rifles snapped up in unison. Open fire. The corridor erupted in gunfire. Sarah braced for pain, but nothing. The energy rounds hit her, but instead of tearing through flesh, they slowed, their force dampened before they fizzled into nothing. Her body absorbed the impact like a stone thrown into a deep ocean. She didn't have time to question it. Sarah moved, leaping forward and grabbing the nearest soldier. She crushed his weapon with one hand and sent him crashing into the others with the other. They collapsed in a heap. 2 more guards turned to run. Sarah let them. She wanted them to run. She wanted them to spread the fear. The Inquisitor's terror. Inquisitor Vasher stood in the central command room, his hands trembling. He had overseen countless executions, broken thousands of prisoners, and had never once questioned the finality of death. Yet the human girl stood, alive, unstoppable. He watched on the monitors as Sarah tore through another squad, moving with impossible grace, dodging plasma fire like she could see the shots before they were fired. "This isn't possible," one of his officers stammered. "Nothing survives a full neural incineration." "Then tell me, Lieutenant," Vasher growled, voice unsteady. "How do you explain that?" The officer had no answer. Vasher turned away, mind racing. The Emperor would demand answers. And if he could not provide them, his own life would be forfeit. A single human rebel should have been nothing. But this was a threat. He pressed a communicator on his wrist. "Lock down the facility. Deploy heavy units. I want her captured alive." A pause. "Sir." The officer swallowed. "What if we can't?" Vasher's cold eyes flicked to the screen, where Sarah was tearing a security door off its hinges. "Then pray we do," he murmured. Reunion with the Resistance. Sarah burst through the final security door, emerging onto a landing platform high above the cityscape. The air was sharp and cold, the sky a deep black, lit only by the neon glow of Imperial structures. In the distance, she saw a transport ship weaving between the spires. Her people. "Sarah?" A voice crackled over her stolen communicator. It was Jonas, one of the last remaining leaders of the human resistance. "Yeah," she exhaled. "I'm back." A stunned pause. Then, "We saw the reports. They said you were dead." "I was." The silence that followed was heavy. But now wasn't the time for questions. "Pick me up," she said. "We've got work to do." The ship swooped in low, thrusters flaring as the side hatch opened. Sarah sprinted forward just as more guards flooded onto the landing pad behind her. A sniper rifle fired, a plasma shot screaming through the air. It should have hit her square in the back. But she felt it before it came. Her body moved on instinct, twisting just enough to let the shot whiz past harmlessly. She didn't stop. With a powerful leap, she jumped onto the ship, gripping the railing as Jonas pulled her aboard. The doors sealed shut as the pilot banked hard, sending them rocketing into the sky. Inside, the rebels stared at her in stunned silence. Jonas, his dark eyes filled with disbelief, finally spoke. "Sarah, what happened to you?" She looked down at her hands that had been burned, shattered, broken, but were now whole, stronger than ever. "I don't know," she admitted, "but the Empire's afraid." And for the first time in a long time, the Resistance had hope. The Empire reacts. Vasher knelt in the Emperor's vast, dimly lit chamber, the weight of failure pressing on his shoulders. The Emperor's presence was a suffocating force, his silhouette barely visible behind the massive throne. A low, rasping voice filled the chamber. The human girl lives. Why, yes, my emperor, Vasher stammered. A long silence. Then, a quiet chuckle. This is interesting. The emperor leaned forward, his golden eyes glowing beneath the hood. Find her, he commanded. She is not the first of her kind, but she may be the last. The power within. Sarah sat in the dimly lit cargo bay of the Resistance transport, staring at her hands. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence as they fled into deep space, away from the Imperial stronghold. The rebels sat around her, still in shock. Jonas, their de facto leader, was pacing, his eyes flicking between her and the others. You died, he said, voice tight. We all saw the reports. The Empire doesn't fake executions. They made sure of it. So tell me, Sarah, how are you here? Sarah exhaled slowly. I don't know. Jonas stopped pacing. That's not an answer. I died, Jonas. Her voice was firm, but she could hear the edge of disbelief in it, as if she didn't fully believe it herself. I felt it. My body shut down, my heart stopped, and everything went dark. But then something brought me back. She flexed her fingers. Her body felt different, more powerful, more alive than ever before. There was an energy inside her, humming beneath her skin, like a second heartbeat. Jonas knelt in front of her. Sarah, look at me. She met his eyes, and for the first time, she saw fear in them. Not fear of her, but fear for her. This isn't normal, he said quietly. This is something else. And if we don't figure out what it is, the Empire will. Silence settled over the room. The weight of that truth hung over them like a storm cloud. Then, one of the younger rebels, Talia, spoke up. Maybe this isn't just some accident. Jonas turned to her. What do you mean? Talia hesitated, then pulled out a data slate, flicking through files. Before we raided that Imperial base, I was scanning their archives for anything on human prisoners. I found something strange, a classified file labeled Project Revenant. Sarah's breath caught. What did it say? Talia shook her head. That's the thing, it was mostly encrypted. But the little I could pull said the Empire had records of humans surviving lethal wounds. Even documented cases of resurrections. They tried to bury it, erase it from history. A cold shiver ran down Sarah's spine. Jonas clenched his jaw. If that's true, then the Empire has known about this for a long time. Sarah looked down at her hands again. The pieces were coming together, but the picture was terrifying. What if, she hesitated, then met Jonas' gaze. What if this isn't just about me? What if all humans have this potential, but the Empire has spent centuries suppressing it? A grim silence fell over the room. Jonas finally stood, turning to the pilot. Get us to a safe house. Now. Sarah exhaled, trying to calm the storm in her mind. She had returned from death. But she wasn't just some miracle. She was part of something bigger. And she wasn't sure if that terrified her more than it thrilled her. The Inquisitor's pursuit. Deep in the heart of the Imperial fleet, Inquisitor Vasher stood before a hollow display, staring at the last recorded footage of Sarah Kade's impossible resurrection. The Emperor's words echoed in his mind. She is not the first, but she may be the last. Vasher's claws tightened into fists. The Emperor had known. The Empire had known. And now he was expected to clean up their mess. A transmission flickered to life. An Imperial scientist appeared on the screen, his face pale. We've analyzed the data from Kade's escape, Inquisitor. And, Vasher growled, she isn't just healing quickly. The energy readings from her body suggest an activation. Something dormant has awakened inside her. If we could capture her alive, we might be able to. Vasher cut the feed with a flick of his wrist. He had heard enough. Turning to his officers, he barked a command. Deploy the hunter-killers. Track her down. His cold, reptilian gaze flickered with something new. Not fear. Anticipation. The awakening. Sarah stood at the edge of the safe house's open bay doors, staring into the endless black of space. The ship had landed on an abandoned asteroid outpost, a temporary hideout while the Resistance planned their next move. Jonas approached, arms crossed. "You should get some rest." "I don't feel tired," she admitted. "I don't feel anything bad at all." Jonas sighed. "You really don't get it yet, do you?" She frowned. "Get what?" He stepped closer. "Sarah, you didn't just survive. You changed. You're stronger, faster, and hell, you dodged a plasma bolt without even seeing it. This isn't just healing. It's something else." She clenched her fists. "Then maybe it's time I learn what it is." Jonas studied her, then nodded. "Talia's digging into the archives we stole. If the Empire's been covering this up, we'll find out why." Sarah turned back, toward the stars. For years, humanity had been seen as weak, powerless, expendable. But if the Empire was afraid of what she had become, then maybe, just maybe, they had always been afraid of humans. And it was time to remind them why. Humanity's forgotten past. The stolen Imperial archive flickered on the screen, a swirling mass of encrypted data. Talia's fingers flew over the console, sweat beading on her forehead as she worked to crack the layers of security. Sarah stood behind her, arms crossed. Jonas leaned against the wall, watching with tense silence. "We need answers," Sarah said, voice firm. "If the Empire has known about this for centuries, we need to know why." Talia gritted her teeth. Almost there, the screen flashed. The encryption shattered. Lines of classified Imperial text scrolled before them. Jonas pushed off the wall and leaned in. "What are we looking at?" Talia skimmed the data, her expression darkening. "It's worse than we thought." She tapped a section and read aloud. "Project Revenant. Classified Imperial Record. Year 4721 GC. Early encounters with primitive human populations have revealed an anomaly. Subjects have demonstrated resilience beyond expected biological thresholds. Some individuals have exhibited complete cellular regeneration after fatal trauma. These findings suggest an ancient genetic adaptation, a dormant ability lost over generations." Sarah's breath caught. Jonas frowned. "So, it's not just you?" Talia shook her head. "No. This was something all humans once had. Something the Empire worked hard to erase." She scrolled further, eyes narrowing. "Subjects who display activation of this ability are to be immediately neutralized or contained. No records of human resilience are to remain in the historical archives. Suppression protocols are in effect to ensure the species remains unaware of its former strength." A sickening silence followed. Sarah clenched her fists. "They took it from us." Jonas exhaled, rubbing his jaw. "They didn't just conquer humanity. They rewrote us." The room felt colder. Sarah looked down at her hands, the hands that had healed, the body that had refused to die. This wasn't a gift. It was something that had always been hers, something stolen by the Empire. And she wasn't going to let them keep it. She turned to Jonas. "We can't just run anymore. The Empire has spent centuries keeping humans weak. It's time we remind them who we really are." Jonas studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Talia, prep the ship," he said. "We're taking this fight to them." The Emperor moves. Deep within the Imperial capital, Inquisitor Vasher knelt before the Emperor once more. The chamber was silent except for the slow, rhythmic breathing of the cloaked figure on the throne. The air hummed with unseen power. "She knows," Vasher said, his voice tight. "She's uncovered the records." The Emperor was still for a long moment. Then, a quiet chuckle. "So, they begin to remember." Vasher hesitated. "Do we engage?" The Emperor finally lifted his gaze. His golden eyes burned beneath the shadow of his hood. "Crush them, before they awaken the rest." Vasher bowed and left, but a sliver of doubt gnawed at him. He had always believed humans were lesser. Weak. But if that was true, then why had the Empire spent thousands of years ensuring they stayed that way? The final stand. The Resistance fleet dropped out of hyperspace, engines burning bright as they approached the Imperial Research Station orbiting a dead moon. Inside the lead ship, Sarah stood on the bridge, clad in stolen combat armor. Every muscle in her body thrummed with energy. Jonas stood beside her. You sure about this? Sarah smiled. Not even a little. Jonas smirked. Good enough. Talia's voice crackled over the comms. We've got incoming, 3 destroyers, multiple fighter wings. Sarah rolled her shoulders. Let's give them hell. The ships clashed in a violent storm of plasma fire. Fighters darted between laser barges, explosions lighting up the void. Sarah led a boarding team, blasting through an airlock and into the Imperial station. The halls were lined with armored troopers, but she was faster, stronger. Her team followed her lead, taking down squads with ruthless precision. She reached the command center, where Vasher was waiting. The Inquisitor unsheathed a crackling energy blade. You think this changes anything, human? Sarah grinned. Yeah, I do. They clashed. Vasher was fast, but Sarah was faster. She dodged each strike as if she could see the future, her body reacting before her mind could process. His blade sliced across her ribs. Pain flared, but then it was gone. The wound sealed almost instantly. Vasher froze. Sarah grabbed his wrist, twisted, snap. His weapon fell from limp fingers. He stared at her, fear in his reptilian eyes. This isn't possible. Sarah leaned in, voice cold. It is. And soon, every human will remember. With a final strike, she ended him. The station's defenses collapsed, and the resistance fleet overran the Imperial forces. Sarah stood on the bridge, watching as their ships jumped into hyperspace, carrying the truth with them. Humanity's past had been stolen. Now it was time to take it back. Epilogue. The Emperor's Fear. A lone Imperial officer knelt before the Emperor, trembling. The rebels escaped. The Emperor was silent. They have the files. They know the truth. Still, silence. Then a slow exhale. This war, the Emperor murmured, has only just begun. His golden eyes burned brighter. They think themselves strong. Let us see if they are worthy of what they have reclaimed. The chamber plunged into darkness.